Hello, Judge Napolitano. There's a John Adams who, and a whole bunch of police have been planting evidence as digital to cover up what they've been doing with falsified police reports since I was a kid. They attached me to fake going into the police department and communicating with them or anywhere else. I didn't communicate with them when I was a kid. They pretended other with people who did that as an adult too. Three times they've been using it interstates and internationally. Mental health evaluations, locations with judges and prosecutors who have roles with their extended family members together, individually grouped in together. Also that way with the branches of government. Times collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones since founding. Part of the things they have state secrets about is how they have roles with all these sacred countries, ones that we have weapons pointed against each other too. We are names A through Z as a human volume, now used as systems tactile ulterior, from the one we are employed hypernative naturalized. And this is what nature shows each body to appreciate the difference of how the breaching method, for example, made more than anything else the difference between indigenous populations. It is the last vestiges of, it's the last hope of humanity. And not because of the physical identity, although because of the hyper additional nature that it brings and is, as this system again abridged. This is the value of the Constitution abridged. But we have been, in other words, they have people on YouTube doing way worse than Ron Adams is involved with. There's a Joshua Julian and there's a Ray Cololo involved with him, and a Mark Violet involved with people at UConn, and a Mike Violet with their mother at UConn, and with the foreign and domestic military on off the state capitol. These are people involved with Sandy Hook camp and with whiting forensics through time, who have roles planting evidences and roles with federal evidences crimes, with names on my street, with child defenders of campuses. I never had a class with Mark Violet or in my life. In other words, they try to make fake exceptions. These are people involved with making fake exceptions. Increasingly, there's a Leahy family involved with them, judges and prosecutors. There's a Brian Silver, who's one of the ones with the Britain Superior Court involved with this. Ryan Adams brought up the names of Weathersfield Police. Then they're forging and switching names, trying to make it look like they're putting fake motivations. Increasingly, these are people roles with all these different countries. And the difference of that is involved. As people, a whole bunch of people tied to them, planting evidences and abuses of the people on all sides of where I lived, every intercities, and they connected the people that were involved with this when I was a kid, making fake. So these are the people I caught with involved with abuses of little kids on and off campuses with the leaders of the kids' roles, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded. Be per the uses of the kids of the intelligence families, foreign and domestic, at the same time, private involved. Thank God for a Texas company that helped test me when I was 4 years old, and I went to kindergarten, and I could read at 11th grade level. See, they put people with headphones on. They lie about why they did it. In other words, they have the processes of people. They have people's names, and they have their family members involved with them lying about what they think about other kids' intelligence and adults' intelligence, while they are tactically delusions raw black pupils. These are some KKK black themed. So these are people from UConn who have some KKK and black themed roles with child defenders. And they're pretending it has roles with how they get trained or what it takes long to train or what. In other words, they have intelligence communities. Sometimes they're there because they have kids in the schools. Sometimes they're there because they teach in the schools. or they have otherwise, in other words, even gym teachers, the conversations are being used criminally for an influence to plant evidences as the natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders overtly, slash insidiously because they are coming from off the campuses. These are people from Washington, D.C., who have roles with uses of my name. I never had a personal conversation with them in my life. Something to do with two speech class teachers I have roles with families that live near me, with this Leahy family, involved with untimely deaths when I was a kid and when I was an adult. These are people involved with morgues, witness. What's that place called? Whiting Forensics, the witness protection program, all kinds of natures of roles with body dumping spots, their patients and criminals, and medical people that associated with them, involved with a whole bunch of people from Weathersfield into branch. I don't know if the state corrections office, I don't know if the state judicial branch offices, and adjacent and conjunctions to that, and to the spots next to it, along roads and routes like Route 3. There's a Mr. Neville I never had a personal conversation with. That was used to pretend other by people involved with him, which he demonstrated various ways. Is involved with people that were involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and they use this method of everyone forcing people to speak through others so they can pretend they didn't understand people or change what they say. So it's very sick when you people start saying that others are doing drugs and things too, when they mention child abuse acts and names involved. See people name switching and forging names. These are names on off the Ninth Circuit Court the day of the World Trade Center attack, and the house and the spots next to it, and on off the World Trade Center. Names further involved with the attack and with the responses to it, all sides. They never had possession of their names. America never had possession of our country's name. So this Ron Adams is involved. He said he brought. I don't know if he's saying it like or you can't tell if he's serious or not, but it's involved with child offenders. And he brought the Weathersfield police, who are already recorded involved with child offenders, and more leaders of the kids involved with it, abuses of their kids too, specifically to abuse other kids and as adults too. This is through time, so they can exploit it when they're adults too and off campuses. These are descriptions of what they think, and they ask, what they agreed. This preaching method caused negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures at countries A through Z. So it could have people have to make respond to them as factual nature or not respond to them and come to that conclusion with suits and ties counters and exceptions as collusions and pretending others. So valuing, blaming other things, others ourselves, and that having been for the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, like child offenders. There were reports that there's a famous boxer who's going to be in front of the Congress. Congress is used individually, grouped and together with predicate acts with facts methods. Certain type of victim slash hyper victim. Forgiveness is important to show how they can't afford to exist, let alone to protract short words with convictions proper, where we are properly capable of discerning because of how used remotely. Names in all natures of difference, including that of titles and jobs and wealth, and causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures like murders. So roles with murders intercities. The intelligence community has an extent of consciousness that they increasingly communicate confessions about their roles with natures of things like that, at least plausible. But they also have standard roles with natures of precedents and statutes reading, natures of reality reading, where they still have self-value rules, switching names, forging names. Readings of statutes, they give themselves the benefit of the doubt at the last second. So they do maintain, for example, so they maintain at locations and online roles of predicate acts with facts. Also, simultaneously, criminally foreign influence readings of statutes regarding the value of what is said online. There are people at locations with involved with wire crimes and Weathersfield police forging and switching names with their families' involvements with child offenders. That same names involved with elderly homes and spots next to it. The same names involved with veteran homes in the spots next to it. This is how anyone even got away with pretending they couldn't realize that all kinds of natures of hyper evidential proofs that the veterans buildings, the design of them, is more so being having been employed by the breaching method that was entrenched with slavery sickly distinctly north and south colony, northern and southern colonies that our founders had to count or store at 13 positions inside of temporary to get the breaching method itself. Everyone too afraid of that and had to be a fake side together. But they also had to still hide from those breaching method laws. So leave slavery entrenched. Our founders communicated for us to understand that, but we have other communicated for James Madison. So they call it the framers. Meanwhile, they're framing our founders. Our founders communicated for us to understand how they didn't have free speech. They had to lie about their motivations for having the abilities to have different narratives and natures of means, like to pretend to be against the tea tax. No, while slavery, witch trials, natures, and things like that, they are still effectively employed to measure and maintain other things, others, or selves. Blamed, blamed for what caused witch trials, what they were about, rather. Because regardless of who made them up or to what extent what, they're about that human predicate acts with facts delivery system method and or the value of that or the criminal and citizens nature delivery system method that we could all discern clearer than day. But everyone leaves out how we that gets passed aside. And or they blame on other things other than themselves. And self-value truths used for lies. If someone's a dictator or if someone's it's a democracy or not, that's being used as a shell game by both sides involved with it. The difference of it. Because mandated law, the people are following it, are using it to measure and maintain. People aren't going to leave out what came first, which is predicate acts with facts rules. The nature demonstrates to us before we leave grammar school. We understand how and why the identities of the branches of government and the intelligence, the exceptions, their state collusions, they can't afford because of their family members. At the same time, with overt criminal enterprises and killers, to have discerned what nature shows us properly about American history. We discern that breaching method sickly distinctly with its uses of the difference of Native Americans individually grouped in together. Sickly distinctly they were against the colonists, that they did this to them through. And we know the colonists. So why they came here is because that was only allowed England too, because they were the possession there. That was only allowed Spain too, because they were the possession there. They're all from semi-ancient times, all individual names, all groupings of humanity, all voicings of it, let alone the voicings of it, and all together. Everyone has been systems tactical ulterior than the one that is the identity of the sciences, non-distinctly, and distinctly only where and how this is right where we can discern it. So, so Judge Napolitano, there were reports. I don't know about what they're not letting him speak about the acts, or they're saying, oh, there's nothing. They're changing what people say. We need to go to the actual child abuse acts and not using other people's reporting on Facebook, on Twitter. The FBI has rules with someone named with the name Ian, with a bunch of people with the name Ian, neighbors of theirs. Increasingly, people tied to a Coach Hagenbar, who I never had a personal conversation with. That was, in other words, one on one, ever. And he's involved with people with the former director of the FBI and other agencies and courts, how they make fake exceptions for how they use location slash S, criminally foreign influence slash hypercriminally foreign influence and tactically delusions while they pretend not to realize. So, Ray Cologne and Joe DeMauro recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. And Tim O'Brien and Andrew O'Brien, they have roles in wire crimes and with police and with police families of different natures in different departments. A whole bunch of people tied to them who have been planting evidence, fake lies about themselves and others where they have the right to lie, but they use that where they don't have the right to lie. Sometimes it's the people that tell them to do it. Sometimes it's themselves. These are people that are timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and a whole bunch of different countries, including ones with nuclear weapons. And regardless of who they're pointed at, the countries A through Z have the suburbs designed tactically denatured to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, while being a theater, not realizing because the only means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures were already sustained, being and having been employed. Collusions with the method slash S of causing negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, already having caused it, and maintaining that the demonstrations of that by nature, blamed on other things, others, ourselves. And those real motivations increasingly coupled with the because of timed uses of it, exceptions everyone's missing. America never had an identity to be able to discern the difference of guilt properly with other countries' involvements here and there shared at campuses. Together, they've been recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirming roles with abuses of the kids now as an adults at Central Connecticut State University and Trinity College who are involved with the federal evidences crimes on my street as roles with the names involved. These are also people with overt criminal enterprises, ones and professors, not legitimately with the agencies, unmarked police forms. See how they're speaking for culture? Their differences interbranch. When they speak for their differences, they're a certain type of victim slash hyper victim. This is, for example, too. Additionally, with this, on the side note, this breach method had black and white intelligence agencies as collusion. Intercultural police forms, overt criminal enterprises, and private ones are used to screen. Worse, using that remotely because there's proofs that international that there were semi-ancient intelligence people, which means interbranch and exceptions. And it means not just, it means that every country has three branches of government manifest for how the Trinity is manifest. Cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall slash S is a demonstration of this. Atomic nucleus, proton neutron grouped identity of relativity to this. And electron identity of relativity with this is a demonstration of the same thing. Vaccine. So Judge Napolitano, this Brian Adams is one of the names he brought. He changed, he switched names. He said Powers or Powell, and I believe Weathersfield Police. You're not supposed to start playing games with names and switching names when a proven principal child abuser also has roles with courts that have been forging names and switching names interstates. These are people on all sides of the World Trade Center also attacked, and the Ninth Circuit Court next to all sides of the case that were attached also to faked and changed words by the investigators of the attack, who also have personal and professional roles with the World Trade Center people who were increasingly forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded. My Saudi friend wasn't even with me in New York at the time, and there's a Claudia Scalora who showed up there and involved as one of the people involved with former director of the FBI Robert Luskin and his dependent capacities in a 2006 district court case, but also as one of the people involved with the Joe DeMauro, with more than one Joe DeMauro, a Tony DeMauro, and a John DeMauro, involved on and off Town Line Drive and Southstein Highway, on and off other side entrances there, and side entrances to parks, with mayors planting evidences with foreign and domestic intelligence families. Not and these are types of counters who have collusions with those types of things. Vaccines. So on a mass scale, they keep saying, "Oh, you're doing drugs and things like that." When people mention actual acts, because they bring things before courts that have to hide live progressions relative to how they are being and haven't been used remotely originally and still, relative to how it is hyper evidentially recorded names on all sides in criminal and civil cases and the families at the interbranch locations, their lawyers, their family members, people's at corners of the streets tied to people next to them. They're all influenced to pretend passions and to pretend plant evidences, make up little things and details, self value other people doing that, and furthering fake things. They get away with it because they have a whole bunch of different countries at the campuses. See, but they're not supposed to be leaking these things, but that's what they do because they're forging names and switching names, refusing to identify themselves. So Ron Adams has roles with the medical community also with them. Judge Napolitano, there's a Leahy, there are people with more than one people with the name Brenton Leahy, and both of them are involved with judges and prosecutors attached me with fake conversations with themselves and through the mail, fake transcripts, as doctors with mental health locations, involved with a whole bunch of people involved with predicate acts on my street, even though I've never seen them on my street, like a Rick Sanfaglione, involved also on Covington Street. Covington Street sought me out before I even lived there. They sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They have roles with judges and prosecutors and criminally foreign influenced foreign bodies. And then that after the World Trade Center attack, they confirmed roles with this further. These are people involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and various courts who have roles together with collusions at West Hartford locations and on off children's campuses and fire campuses and on off Central Connecticut State University. They have roles with different ownerships of in the transitions between businesses, including digital ones, including different real estate companies involved with them. There are people on Covington Street involved with the ownerships of the building and the people that work for the buildings who are intercities involved and intra that spot there involved. So there's a Jose Gill who has a relative involved with the intelligence community, who's one of the ones involved with some Latina and KKK themed and black themed police forms and medical families that have been putting fake things in databases, fake ties to kids, fake natures of ties to them. They've been hiding life progressions. They've been used as tools to keep blamed on other things, others ourselves, the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, like how and why there is no success in New York City for people stacked on, who for people and people stacking, and they're calling it poverty because there's a certain type of victim slash hyper victim who had other communicated. and has other communicated for James Madison, let alone James understanding James Madison and how they got him as the founder or the face of our founders. They got George Washington to agree to the plan to force just for a temporary time people to break the rules. So then they had no chance but to rely on our founders as the face of James Madison and on our first president as the face of George Washington to get us to be an individual identity out of nowhere, even though it was incapable of being. That's why, and that's how they had the crazy laws against everyone, witch trials, slavery with black, use tactical theory from how nature's using it and communicating with it, black pupils. We have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. Nature's communicating about difference. Nature is the hyper additional nature that we are all semi nature relationship to. Just like all the parts of our body are a semi nature relationship to our complete identity. In our species volumes, we are being shown the difference between invisible but still discernible and hyper invisible but still discernible. The verb is invisible but still discernible. Participle natures, the present participle, the past participle. These are hyper invisible but still discernible. We're dealing with now, but we only have an extent to this. And English was revealed to teach this. So people I never had conversations with my grammar school had increasingly they had the high lie progressions. I had nothing to do with them in middle school. They tried to make exceptions with the people that were hiding the lie progression. Increasingly, they were doing that since. And they run online and pretend things, illusions tied to the people that are getting away with it because of the illusions they stuck in databases. So they've been spying on me since I was a kid, too, to use truths for lies. These are people involved with Russians, Koreans, Japanese. There are proofs China because of how they because of the people involved with the nature of confessions tied to Central Connecticut State University's roles through time, affecting confessions of little kids at campuses and how on and off them and the difference of that is used. So the newspapers and the networks, they've been using the right to lie. They're direct to lie by their sources as the intelligence community. And they have directions to lie to hide things because they're too expensive per what CNN reported regarding the readings of statutes, for example. But it's also they're leaving out exceptions and exception nature is actually as it is actually recorded. They are leaving human potentials out as they're actually recorded. In the interview with Tucker Carlson and Vladimir Putin, note how he says they speak about potentials. See, but countries A through Z left out how they go take classes and they learn the names of countries and or they go there to visit them. But those names are still being and haven't been employed, just like isms, like Nazism. If I hear that, in other words, Nazism is being used to measure and maintain other things, others, or selves, being blamed for what caused the world wars. To understand what caused the world wars, one has to observe what came from semi-ancient times that was using the database relativity of our names and of the republic for which we stand, that had criminally foreign influence, uses of systems tactical terror from the one it was capable of being led by the discernment of our abridgments and how to get and that reveals ourselves getting unabridged Constitution nature. That brings means out of nowhere. That brings a nature that brings means out of nowhere too. So our name is used by the people who want to defend their jobs. Well, this is my thing, and and because I know this, America's the problem. America hegemony. How could they speak about American hegemony? America has barely been a country without slavery because the breaching method still had it entrenched, still has it entrenched too. The nature of the debate regarding this too. It contains criminally foreign influence, fact, nature, quality aspects, natures used and reliant upon everyone having been taught other than our founders communicated for us to understand. And I read that we're supposed to understand James Madison as the face of our founders, and that he made that agreement with George Washington to counter extort them at 13 locations, 13 colonies, 13 parts in 13 colonies. They couldn't even counter extort a whole colony, let alone 13 colonies. They could only take counter extort 13 key people for a short time. Now they have no chance of survival because the breaching method laws to measure and maintain everyone through themselves were so crazy against everyone. So then they had to rely upon our founders and recruit more people to help them the same way. Anyway, that's why and how. How can you understand the Civil War if you don't understand that? How could you understand and explain how the North had roles with slavery still while they were fighting the Civil War? They were forced to be aside and to get unabridged. That means there's no slavery involved if you're trying to defend an unabridged constitution. But no one had free speech. Again, you have to understand that we have to discern this breaching method. So little Brap Guy and friends present a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. And they realize they're going to get caught internationally in some ancient times. Some people apart with the overt criminal enterprises, the transnational criminal enterprise they had been a part of. But when they figured they were going to get caught before they were going to get caught, and it involved some of the ancient intelligence people, black and white. This is more probable and it's more demonstrably plausible as we will examine. But in other words, and then they figured out the only thing they could do to not get caught is to force, trick, hurt, and persuade people to counter other things, others, and selves wrongly by hurting people out of nowhere and making, in other words, and this is what is increasingly going on. And increasingly, there are needs for those motivations, narratives, and natures, including the interbranch ones, keeping blamed on other things, others, ourselves, and how getting away with styles handed to them, research and things like that with campuses and names and locations, exceptions tied to that as collusions too. The difference of that is used. All sides in criminal and civil cases never stop being used remotely criminally foreign influence, and the difference of them and the interbranch, putting fake things in databases, using all instances, descriptions real and made up, and or made up to hide what came first. Because nature uses one of the ways it communicates to us is increasingly the value of the difference between what's more important that came first or that was, which is where and how we could deal with physical, metaphysical, and identity, relativity, three ways, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, / hyper simultaneously, a positive and negative, and that can be simultaneously positive or not. And this can be in nature shows us, means to discern the difference between positive, that is criminal insidious natures of positive or not, and something that is denying the value of what came first, black pupils. Ye hyper native here. So Ron Adams, why don't you be a man and admit if you made up about knowing Judge Napolitano, and admit about how you played games with the Weathersfield police names, and I won't press charges against you. In other words, I only need the names of the judges and police forms and their family members involved. And that's because now the Mazzucato family, Judge, former police chief Cintron, you're playing games in background. You got to admit they should not pretend to know me, and they should say sorry to people with the FBI and other agencies and courts planting evidences with you guys along roads and routes, and with the newspapers. And what are you doing with the foreign and domestic military along Elm Streets in Weathersfield and Rocky Hill, and with all those boyfriends tied to the ones with the men and women who share the name Bobby, and on Covington Street in the Britain, involved with you with child offenders through time. There's a principal at the same school I caught you with the other principal child abuser with your kid. There's a Jessica Cintron. You're making me use her name, Police Chief Cintron, because you're being a coward. With the judges and prosecutors planting evidences with you in the news, and you're hiding your roles with their families and with yours. On and off Trinity College and CCSU with the names next to those locations, with identity theft frauds lying about yourselves and others. And we're going to see that others recorded on these campuses then is pretended into their databases from off campuses. And you're going to get them on paper. Let's go. Get this Michael Emmett on paper too. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with digital crimes with WTNH, fabricating emails and changing what's actually recorded, and with perception, tactical delusions raw too, with various natures of police also switching and forging names on and off the Weathersfield Police Department, the Weathersfield town offices, something to do with the FBI and other agencies involved with Lena's Pizza and a Daryl Sullivan, and people with the name Magdalena and Maggie associated with him on Park Street in Hartford, Connecticut. They have roles with the intelligence community on and off Central Connecticut State University. And as people involved with Weathersfield, Connecticut, involved with child offenders on off campuses, intercities, also with the intelligence community. So they're training police forms, and they're training people to use words like crimes and punishment and justice, who are tactically delusions raw, criminally foreign influence, predicate acts with facts, morals, methods, natures, fake motivations, planting with foreign bodies since they were kids. Also, if you bring that up, it makes it look like you knew them. Only exceptions I know, they make fake exceptions too, but they can't be honest about what actually happened or what came first and what is actually recorded all around. So we have a whole bunch of types of experts and employments that the North and South were made, and that's part of their narratives in nature. Same thing with the political parties and the exceptions. They're putting employments that can't defend themselves and afford to be, let alone to protract. The words of anyone making convictions proper by the Constitution unabridged. And and what's proper with how to respond to things. You don't change and start calling people names and telling them to take drugs and pretend you perceive mental weaknesses in them when they mention actual acts of child abuse. Now, these are people with the prisons and the courts countering such as collusions with it too. The difference of that is also used because more than anything, the hyper foreign body needs to keep and kept other things, others ourselves, blamed when it was the thing responsible. And this is increasingly on a mass scale, where and how and why we have these identities of titles who have the audacity to pretend that success stood anywhere. Fix fix the fake news, WFSB, please. Do what's right. I don't have a phone. I'm not gonna call you again. They fabricate and change transcripts clearer than day. I had no conversation with you. I was in no location with you. You pretended things when I caught them with the principal child abuser and untimely deaths roles that brought it up. Intercities, the same names had roles with murders and with shootings and with prosecutors and judges involved with using investigators remotely. All kinds of crazy things are going on constantly. And those negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, while you don't know how to respond to them properly. All exceptions, exception nature too. Instead of having with nature shows with that, you're using them to hide that because that's how you were shown. It's not fake it to make it. It's fake it, and that's only all that's been voiced. So statutes and precedents are fake. CT must break. The only old one that's worthy is Marbury versus Madison, and we're supposed to understand that. The other ones, readings of statutes for a long time, they left out exceptions in exception nature, let alone how nature uses it hyper additionally to answer our questions. You guys are also delaying how we can put these means, not just for our country. What makes, in other words, if you're one of those natures of industries that needs to go, oh, we're going to be transparent. None of I see suits and ties, counters, exceptions. They can't even defend that. How are they going to be transparent? Can't afford to have what's actually capable of being discerned. Discerned. That one has learned vaccines. I teach us things but long. There's Napolitano. Please get the Weatherfield police on paper and make sure they apologize to the people. They involve increasingly people with a John DeMorrow and a Joe DeMorrow and a Tony DeMorrow have roles at town lines with them, with the names on my street involved with wire crimes with them, mail crimes. They don't even know themselves because they're coaching people to repeat things, and then they ask them about it. It's what they call investigation. They've been using investigators remotely. It's nothing personal. I love you all, neighbors. Get them on paper, one name in sequence. I'll show you what to do. I'll show you what to do. Oh, let's go. Get them on paper.